seconds. We're live now. We're getting ready to.
Your show will go live
Here we
in
go.
5 seconds.
5, 4, 3.
3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, great Sunday afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the Crescent discussion group. This is the program that has the most and the best Islamophobic introduction that mankind could ever develop. And we thank Connie every week when we play that. Actually, we play it twice a week, don't we? Play it on our Tuesday night show, too. You guys might notice we got like a little different look here on the screen. Everybody's name and the banner is in green. There's a reason for that. And if anybody knows about the religion of Islam, you might be able to figure that one out. But anyway, welcome to the show. Today, we are going to be talking about Mecca in the 7th century. And I know, we get the normal banter back and forth. Well, okay, if the show's topic is going to be about Mecca in the 7th century, it's going to be about the shortest show that anybody would ever make because there's no evidence to discuss about Mecca in the 7th century. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to keep it focused on what evidence we do have, so-called, and what evidence that you would expect to have, and there is none, and what evidence people have put out there that might be able to reconcile that little problem. I want to take care of a couple admin things here. I wanted to thank Chris Claus, who is not here today. I don't see Chris in the studio, for hosting the show on Tuesday evening. The topic was salvation in Islam, or lack thereof, the assurances that they have there in Islam. And I appreciate him and everybody else that was on the show Tuesday evening doing that. I had a great little skication out in Kafiristan West. I took the grandchildren, my wife and I took the grandchildren out there skiing, and it was fun. I mean, most of the slopes weren't open because they haven't had enough snow yet, but there was enough snow there just to have a good time for 2 days of skiing. And we were actually skiing on Thanksgiving. So I hope everybody again had a blessed Thanksgiving, celebrating the 400th. Believe that or not. I mean, it's been 400 years since their pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock, endured that first cold winter where half of them, people don't realize this, half of them folks died that first winter. Almost half, not quite. I think they're like 1 or 2 bodies short of half the people dying that first winter. And they still stayed there. That's how committed they were to their cause. And that year, you had that Native American, most people call him an Indian, but Squanto, he taught them, where to fish, where to hunt, how to grow food. And it would have been 1621. That fall, they had their little feast celebrating the fact that they were not going to, half of them were not going to die the next winter. So it is always right to celebrate their success and give thanks to God for what all He's done for us. I have been told that there is a couple Muslims that were going to be coming to the show today. I was conversing with one last night on not Instagram. What's that called? Facebook Messenger. And seemed his concern was is that we were setting him up. Uh, and he's a recent convert to Islam from Christianity, and my feeling for him is that he's not confident enough in his beliefs to come on the show and tell us why he reverted to Islam. So we'll see if he comes. If not, well, then we got plenty of things to discuss. Okay, I see.
Do you mind if I ask a quick question about that?
Uh-oh.
It's me.
I know who you are, Mr. Isa. Dr. Isa. Yes, go ahead.
Well, it's something that I don't really understand very much. I keep hearing this concept of revert, but I mean, in my study of Islamic theology, that wouldn't make sense. I think the concept of where this is coming from is the concept of fitra. A fitra is an innate disposition that a person has. But an innate disposition wouldn't, from my understanding in Islamic theology, wouldn't be that you're inherently Muslim. You have to choose to be a Muslim. There's a thing called baligh, which means like puberty. You first have to go through puberty before you can even choose to be a Muslim. You have to be of a state of knowing, and when you're a child, you can't do that. That's why, like, if you're a child and you do something according to, like, at least the Sharia perspective that I've studied, you wouldn't be judged for like a crime that an adult would do. So I'm like, I don't understand this concept of revert and I keep hearing it all the time, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like, are we studying different Islamic theology? Because I don't understand the concept of reversion. I think you have to choose to become a Muslim. You're not born as one.
I agree with what you're saying, because it is a choice, and I think that all of them would admit that it is a choice. So when somebody does take the Shahada, that is when they become a Muslim. So everybody would be considered a revert. Then is that what your argument is? Everybody would be considered
I'm saying that there's no such, that doesn't make sense. It's just like you choosing to be a Christian. You can't be born to be a Christian. You have to.
That's where they differ. They believe that everybody is born in a state of submission to God, which is actually the opposite of what all observations show, that we are born in a state of rebellion to God instead of a state of submission to God.
Well, but I mean, even that state where they're talking about the fitra, the innate disposition, it doesn't make sense, because that wouldn't mean you're a Muslim. That would mean that let's say you're innately good. You're born into goodness, because this is a philosophical construct. Are you born into goodness? Fine, but that doesn't mean you're born into Islam, because Islam, you have to make a conscientious choice. So I'm like, even if we grant that argument, it still makes no sense. You can't be born as a Muslim. You would be born as a person who's good. Fine. But being a Muslim requires that you have to do stuff. You have to make a shahada. You're not born with shahada. That's a conscientious choice that you have to make. So that doesn't, like, I still don't understand the argument. Like, I get the point of what they're saying, but it still theologically makes no sense to me. That's what I'm kind of asking.
Well, okay. Well, here's a suggestion. I'll send you the email address to Al-Azhar University, and you submit your thesis to them and have them figure it out. See if they do it. Because I understand what the position is that if you're going to say that it is a conscious decision to become a Muslim, then that would in itself be an admission that people are born in rebellion to God instead of in a state of submission to God, which is the opposite of what they teach. So there you go. All right, everybody that's in chat today, I see the T-Dog just came into the chat. Thank you for coming, XYZ, Michael, and Jesus Worldwide, Mel. Brennan, the man, is here. Let's see here. Ooh, I had other people here. I might make a list here. Miss Piggy. I like that name. Dragon, Andrew Martin's here. Jesus Worldwide, already said that. And there was one called Ola. I don't know who this person is. Ola means wealth, not hello. Is that? I don't know what that is. But welcome anyway. Darcy, our girl Darcy, is here. UA said that he would like to be on the show, but I guess he's shy, but that's okay. There's people. Well, actually, not everybody on this. I'm looking through the panel here. Nobody on this panel is shy at all. Everybody here is big mouth, and that's okay. Let's get started on today's topic, which is Mecca. Now, if you notice, I titled the show today the most Islamophobic, or what was the title of the show? The hardest hitting Islamophobic show yet. We've spent a lot of time discussing some of the particulars of Islam. We've talked about the Quran and the problems with that. We've done it until we're blue in the face. We've talked about the Hadith and how inept they really are, and some of the Hadith and some of the teachings that are in the Hadith are just really sick, for lack of a better word. And we've also talked about Muhammad until we're blue in the face, and what kind of an individual he was. And all of these things are deemed to be Islamophobic. So if you would talk about Muhammad, it's considered in a negative light. It's Islamophobic. So if you talk about him, marrying little Aisha, it's Islamophobic. Don't you see, to call out a pedophile, or the fact that he ordered the deaths of 600 of the Banu Qurayza tribe one afternoon, and actually helped out in that. This is Islamophobic. Or to point out some of the fruits that we see today from Muslims throughout the world. That's Islamophobic. And there was, oh my goodness, I was reading an article this morning on Jihad Watch. Who here goes to Jihad Watch? Any of you guys go to Jihad Watch? Anybody? Am I the only one that goes to Robert Spencer's site?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
I use it a lot. I
right.
like the original sources more, though.
You like what now, Paul?
I like the original sources that they refer to. That's one thing that that's the great value in his site.
Yeah, because he links them right here. Like this article today, report declares treatment of Christian women and girls in Muslim countries a human rights catastrophe. This is what my Sunday school lesson was about this morning. It was talking about the persecution of the Christian church. And this article was really eye-opening to a lot of people that were in the class. They're like, really? They do that in Muslim countries? I said, yes. And what they're doing is that in Muslim majority countries, and Adam, when he's spoken quite extensively on this topic here on the show, about how they'll kidnap girls, and then when they kidnap the girls, they'll force them Christian girls, not just any girls, but Christian girls, and they'll force them to marry Muslim men, and they don't have to convert. I mean, this is convert to, I'm sorry, we were talking about revert. They don't have to revert, so-called, to Islam. All they have to do is just marry the Muslim man, and when they have children, those children are Muslim. They're not going to be raised as Christians. So you can marry all the Christian women you want, knowing that the children from that marriage will always be raised a Muslim. And when you bring this up and point to the fact that this is actually an act of genocide, because what you're doing is you're taking the girls out of the Christian community and forcing them into the Muslim community to create more Muslims, and taking away from the ability of the Christians to grow their communities. So it really is an act of genocide. So when they talk about report declares treatment of Christian women, girls in Muslim countries as a human rights catastrophe, is the title of the article, and that's what the article discusses. It really is disgusting. But with that said, we spend a lot of time discussing these things. We discuss the fruits of what Islam is. But if you continually discuss what the fruits of Islam, I guess it would have been the fruits of what Islam are, you never really get to the causes, or let me be more concise, the roots of that tree. And so what we're going today is we're going to take a swing at one of those roots that hold up the Islamic tree, which is the city of Mecca. After all, we know that Mecca is supposedly the center of the universe. This is where 1.6 billion Muslims bow to every single day. Pure monotheism. There's nothing pagan about everybody bowing to the same direction, or a rock in the middle of the desert. No. Let's not confuse this. But it is the center of the Islamic universe. Well, the reason why it's the center of the Islamic universe is this is where Muhammad lived. This is where he was born. This is where he first got his initial revelations on Mount Hira. So this is, and again, this is where when their Muslims are told to make Hajj, this is where they go, is Mecca. They're not going to Detroit for Pete's sake. They're going to Mecca. Or they're not going to. Is there a Mecca in California? Does anybody know that? I think I've heard that there's a Mecca in California. Maybe somebody could Google that there in the chat and let me know. So today what we're going to do is we're going to discuss Mecca. So let me go ahead and share my screen with everybody. I have prepared a slideshow. And oops, I'm on the wrong slide already. I've prepared a slideshow, and actually, I have not prepared this slideshow. I kind of am fibbing on that. It was Jay Smith. Now, if any of you guys haven't been able to participate in this, Jay does. He teaches classes at a university out west called Veritas University, and if you go to the website, you can identify these classes that he teaches. And you can either take the class for credit because they're at I believe he teaches them at the master's level. I'm not sure if he teaches them I'm not sure if they're at the undergrad level. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. You can audit the classes, or you can just take them for personal enrichment. And I think the auditing class is $300 some odd dollars. The personal enrichment is $180. But the thing with taking these classes is all that material that he has when he starts talking about, like one of the arguments in the last class that I taken there was about the coins. All the information that he has on coins, he puts in a slideshow like you're going to see today. You get these slideshows. You get a copy of not only get a copy of the video of the Zoom class, but you also get a copy of the slideshow and any other course materials that go along with the course. Let's see here. Going through the chat. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. So I'm giving Jay full affirmation or attribution here for this slideshow. I just pretty much cut and pasted it, and I made a couple modifications.
And it says his name, so we can read that.
Yeah, I put that. I wanted to make sure I sourced him, and so he doesn't call me up and say, "Hey, yo, my material." And I'm like, "Look, Jay, I cited it." And he has told us as we take the class. Like one of the class that he's giving right now is the polemical class, where it tells you where he uses a lot of the strategies that he's incorporated and developed over the years at Speaker's Corner. That's the class that we're taking right now. So it's pretty interesting. It's every Monday night, a couple hours. And yeah, you're right.
That picture that you have there. I mean, it makes the Kaaba, look so minuscule compared to the works of also their own hands. I mean, look how big their Big Ben building is. It's so huge. Compared to that little baby Kaaba right in the center of it.
Well, we're getting to that, and we'll be discussing that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at how big that thing is there, I mean, it's.
Why did they have to borrow from us? I mean, why did they have to borrow Big Ben from us? I mean, it's like.
Why are you getting ahead of me? We need to slow down.
You have good students, Eric. You have good students.
Anyway, come on. Let me get to this stuff. Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Why a historical critique for Mecca? What is the value of doing something like this? And as I mentioned before, if you can demonstrate that Mecca has no evidence for its existence in the 7th century, what you're doing is you're removing one of the foundations of Islam itself. And the great thing about it is that this is neutral. Anybody can use that, and it's politically correct too. And the reason I kind of made a hype on the show's title, the most hate-filled or whatever it was, Islamophobic show to date, and it really isn't. But it has the biggest impact because we can demonstrate using evidence today that it does remove the foundation of Islam. Because you're not attacking Muslims personally. You're not looking, you're not calling Muhammad all these nasty names, like a pedophile, a genocidal, warmongering, murder. You're not saying all these things about Muhammad. So you're not really insulting their prophet. So it's not Islamic phobic. And this is the thing about history. And this is why I love being a history guy, is because history is easy. I mean, it's easy to communicate, and also it's visual. Okay, so where is Mecca? Mecca, of course, right here is located in Saudi Arabia. And I put, where is Waldo? Where does that come from? Where is Waldo? Is there a show that's called Waldo or something?
It's a book.
Yeah, it's books. It's like 16 books or something like that. I only learned that from Frasier.
Okay, so this is a book series, is what it is, and it's called
Yeah,
Where's Waldo?
16 book. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And go
Yeah,
ahead.
when my kids were little in the 90s, there was a series of books called Where's Waldo?
And Waldo would go to different places. And
No, Waldo would just be a character you had to find.
Oh, you would have to find him. Okay. And you would have to find him in different places.
Just like we're trying to find Mecca in the
Okay.
7th century, 6th
All
century.
right. So where is okay? So where?
But,
Go ahead.
but at least with Waldo, you can find him. Mackie, you can't find him.
Yeah.
And so if he went to Mecca in the 7th century, we'd never find Waldo. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's find Waldo. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Okay, so let's take a look about the geographical references in what we find in the Quran. We went through this guy, and where is this guy? The guy that was Winds Wild something from last week said that I'll come next week and I'll prove to you that I'll give you your proof that Mecca existed. And when we were doing that, we were talking about the geographical references from the Quran itself. And if we look at it, there's only 9 places that are named. You had Ad, which is named 23 times, Talmud, which is 24 times. That's a Nabatean, which is kind of odd that they would name the Nabateans out of all the different locations the most in the Quran. And that is because we know that when you look at the Nabateans, where are the Nabateans from? They're from Petra up in Jordan. So when we look at Dan Gibson's work, and a lot of this work that Jay is citing here comes from Dan Gibson's work, by the way. And I think these numbers here also pan out to that. Midian 7 times, and then in Mecca, it's okay. So, they're all out of place. Okay, so let's look at a comparison of the text, and this is what we did last week. We looked at the Quran. You have 65 geographical references, and we're just using one gospel here. Just one gospel. You have 110 separate geographical references just in one of the gospels. Now, granted, Luke is the most detailed of the 4 gospels, but when you compare the number of words in Luke and compare that to the number of words in the Quran, I mean, it was just absolutely phenomenal, the differences. I'm grabbing Dan Gibson's book real quick because I'm trying to look at. Oh, here it is. Okay, the number of words in Luke is 27,090. So you could just say 27,100 to make it a round number. And then you look at the Quran. The Quran has, this is where we had this dispute last week, isn't it? Because this says the Quran has 149,000 words. When you look at some of the other ones, it says 77,000. Well, let's just say it's 77,000. That's still 3 times as many as the Gospel Luke, and it gives almost half, a little more than half of the geographical references there. And here you only have 9 places that are named, and in Luke you have 31 places, and a lot of these places that are in the Quran are way too far north. They're much further north of Mecca than what somebody would expect to find in a book that chronicles the life of Muhammad, who is supposed to be in a city 600 miles to its south. That's the point I'm trying to make there. And if you look at the Bible, of course, they're right exactly where they belong. And in the Quran, they're all in the wrong places. And in the Bible, they're all in the right places. Okay, so let's take a look at the maps, the map evidence. Does anybody have anything to add to that before we get moving along on the map evidence? No.
Well, I just want to say that I found out that I only have to walk 63 miles to Mecca.
You only have to walk how far?
63 miles. That's how far Mecca is from me.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to ask where you are.
Mecca, California.
No,
That would be a lot more walking.
There's
There's actually 10 cities in the United States that are named Mecca.
Wow.
And
where are
one
they
is
from?
in the Los Angeles area. There's actually one in my home location. Actually, there's one in each of my home locations. And then there's a few other ones. So yeah, there's 10 of
Okay.
them, and 10 of them are
I didn't
here.
realize
The
there
other
was
two-
10 of them.
Yeah.
Let me see here.
So, yeah.
So,
the only thing we got in the UK is a Mecca bingo. That's the only thing we got in the UK.
why is okay? Well, I just
That'd
pulled
be a
up the
good
10
building
cities.
to-
Yeah, that would be one of those great questions for one of what was it, Jeopardy games that we. I got to put one of those things together.
Yeah, Mecca building. Yeah.
Where? How many different? Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see. There's a Mecca, Indiana. Let's see, Mecca, Indiana.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wonder how that
Oh,
city is.
I don't know. It kind of gets you to. Let's see.
It
There's
does.
a,
Get you to wonder
There's a Mecca
Yeah.
in Missouri.
who's the mayor.
There's a Mecca in Texas. Alhamdulillah.
Really? Where is that one at?
There's
Is
a
it north,
Mecca.
south, east, and west?
There's a Mecca in my home state, Florida. And there's one. Yeah, there's one in Ohio. Yeah, there's one in Indiana. Let me see. The one on the West Coast is, it's in California, but it looks like it's somewhere around the Los Angeles area. So yeah, look at that. United States. We were founded by Muslims. There's proof.
Yeah. Well, there's actually a mosque. The oldest mosque is right downtown here in Cedar Rapids. It's called the Mother Mosque. I went out and got my picture taken in front of it one day, and it really infuriated a couple people that I won't name. They tried to have my Facebook account deleted because of that, but that's okay.
Just because you went there and took a picture with you in front of it in America.
I
It's a
said
free
that
country.
I said I was passing out literature on the sidewalk in front, and that really.
So on the sidewalk you
Yeah.
can.
Okay, let me get to the punchline here. When I made the ad, because when you create Facebook pages, they ask you to provide an address, and I'm not going to give them my home address.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's right. It's another
So I put the address for
damn
the Mother
business.
Mosque. I put the address for the Mother Mosque there, and the phone number, and that really ticked people off because they're calling the Mother Mosque, thinking they're calling me, and they're like, this Cafford, he doesn't work at anyway. All right, bad joke, but it was quite the deal. All right, so all ham to olive. Well, thank you, Adam. I like the Mecca bar in Texas, not taxes. What is it? Look, okay, it's Texas, not taxes. Okay, let's go to the maps. Let's go to the map evidence. All right, so if we were okay, let me go back here. What would you if you were going to try to establish the fact that some place existed at a certain time? What are the type of evidences that you would come up with? You would come up with archaeological evidence. Is it, when you start digging in around that city, do you find things that place that city in that time period that you believe that it is? Do you have any manuscript evidence? Do you have anybody mentioning in any separate writings the existence of your cities? And then do you have any map evidence? Do you have any evidence from, for an example, throughout Israel, when people would go to Jerusalem, they would carve on rocks. We're going to Jerusalem to celebrate, the whatever celebrations they're having there in Jerusalem. They would write on rocks as they're making their pilgrimage there. So you'd expect us to have the same thing in Mecca if Mecca is this all-encompassing mother of all cities. But one of the things that you would expect to find,
Center of the earth, right? They call themselves that it's the center of the earth.
In England, we have like a group that had a TV show called "Is It Time Team," where they go up and dig up and that stuff. You think they would send a group of like archaeologists like do the 3-day dig to Mecca, to discover the stuff that that's there. But the thing is, they haven't, so there's nothing there. So,
Well, that's one of the things that we're going to be discussing here.
yeah,
Dominic, is the amount of evidence that has been discovered in Mecca to demonstrate that it existed in the 7th century. But one of the things is that you would expect to find, of course, is maps. Because if you're wandering around in the desert where it's 130 degrees, you want a map that tells you which roads are going to take you away from that oppressive heat, or someplace where you can get water, where there is a river, where there's a town that you could trade for food, something there. So you would expect to find Mecca on some of these maps. And here's what we find. Let's see. Here is a map. Let's see, from the 7th century. This is a visit. This is actually a facsimile, just a representation of that map, and it shows you some routes that people would travel, and it mentions some cities that existed at that. Yathrib. We're all very familiar with Yathrib, are we not? Yathrib is modern day Medina. So we have Medina on this map, but notice what city is not on the map. You don't
Mecca.
have Mecca. There's no Mecca there. No está aquí for those that would write it in Spanish. So there's nothing there. There's no Mecca. When you look at another facsimile from the 7th century, it shows you some of the trade routes. And I don't even see Jeddah on here, which is the coastal town. But here's Medina. Here's Medina on here. But I don't see any Mecca, no Mecca. So here is another example of a map from that era that does not have Mecca on it. And this gives you even more close up here, right there. So Mecca should be right about there, if I'm not mistaken. And notice it's not even on that trade route. Here's another 6th century map of Arabia. And notice no Mecca, no está aquí. And here's another 7th century map that doesn't have Mecca on it either. Now look how detailed this map is, though. And this, of course, is this is a facsimile of one. This is actually a representation of the map. But look how many different cities are listed on that map. And you have all of these different cities that are listed on this map. Why isn't Mecca, which is supposed to be this all overarching important city, listed on any of these maps here? That is like the $1,000, $100,000 question. Here's another one, another map of Mecca. Notice it's not there. Look at the details on this map. It's giving you the mountains. It's showing you the different regions, listing all kinds of different cities, and there's nothing there about Mecca. Again, here's another 7th century map of Mecca. Again, it's non-existent, and look at all the details on this map, all kinds of details, and still no Mecca. And then you look at the trade route theory. This is proposed by a guy by the name of Montgomery Watt, where they would offload goods and they would take them across across the Arabian Peninsula, and then run them up into what is now Israel and Jordan and Egypt. But if you do that, how much more difficult is it to transport goods over land than it is by sea? And if you can transport those goods, and it's not this major trade route, it's not a part of this major trade route, but if you transport those goods by sea, you never have to offload them. And to transport something by ship is much less expensive than it is by land, because if you transport those goods over land, number one, it's a lot slower. Number two, you have to carry all that food, you have to carry all that water to feed and water your animals that are transporting these things, and then you have a lot more people on land than you do out in the sea, so it's much more dangerous, and you're more susceptible to be raided or have your things stolen from you. So the trade route, the sea trade route, is crucial to understand why they would in turn bypass Mecca using the Red Sea here, as opposed to traveling over land through Mecca. So more problems with Mecca. Does anybody have anything to say about the maps? Anything at all? I see our brother Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know what? New York isn't on that map either.
Okay, that's very Christophobic of you. So
New York would be called. Wasn't the old name? Was it Netherlands? I can't remember what the old name for New York was. It was something like.
Oh yeah, it was a new. Yeah, actually, yeah, you're great point. Because New York, when it was initially founded, it was founded by the country of Netherlands, the Dutch. The Dutch founded it, and they called it the New Netherlands. But the problem with the Dutch is that they weren't very powerful, and when England, they're building colonies to your north, to your east, or I'm sorry, to your west and to your south, they make you an offer you can't refuse. They say give it up, or we're gonna take it up, regardless. Peter Stewie Savant, I think I can't remember what the guy's governor's name, but he had to basically surrender the colony to the British. Them British folks, nice people, aren't they? Well, that's you, Adam. I'm sorry.
I got a question for you.
I'm English, but the things also I know with the maps. It was either Alexander the Great or one of the Roman generals went through Saudi Arabia, and they hadn't heard of Mecca. There's a famous battle where they try and go through, because they called that area Arabia Deserta,
right?
And they tried to kind of go through there, and they lost most of their men. And they just didn't end up finding, there was nothing there, so they just came back. So it's like pointless. So if Mecca was on the thing, they like completely pointless. So you've even got like historical documents that kind of state, like people like Herodotus or other. It's like it's not there.
And well, there's right, and we're going to be going to some of those documents here shortly. Oh, here, Adam. Oh, Adam came up with a rescuing device. Look at here. Chloe says it got abrogated. Mecca was abrogated from all the historical evidence that we have. And here's Adam's. It said the dotted line, which is not a hard line, so the dotted line got removed from the passage of time. That line that went through Mecca was eventually eroded, and we just can't see it today. That's probably the strongest argument for Mecca that I've seen thus far. That's a great point, Adam. No, not working there. Okay,
maybe they're playing Join the Dots. They're playing like a game. Join the Dots.
One of those paintings
kids
you were drawing to.
Kids like Join the Dots kind of.
I see. Elizabeth made it today. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you? Haven't been on here for quite a while.
Hello, how are you guys doing?
Hey, did you ever get a hold of that fella again, or no? I got your message this morning. Elizabeth, I can't hear you.
I think my dad has tried to message me twice. Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes. But you're coming in kind of broken up. Yes, you're kind of breaking up. What is it with you guys and your internet out there in California? For crying out loud, Steve has the worst internet I've ever
Hey,
seen.
Steve is crystal clear right now.
Well,
so we can't pick on Steve right now.
Elizabeth,
look at his beautiful face.
Elizabeth,
he's got a nice stool. Have you seen the stool in the photo?
You caliphobics. You caliphobics.
Elizabeth, go ahead and sit down next to Steve, and then try talking.
Borrow his internet.
Yeah.
I like the.
Hey, Eric, I got a question for you. I just did a search for like trade routes,
right?
And it's very hard to trust these maps. And I came up with a map that's and I put the link in the private chat, and it says trade routes 570 AD, and lo and behold, it's got Mecca.
Really? All right. Well, let me. I'll take a look at that.
So my question is how can we trust these maps? Because I'm pretty sure somebody put Mecca in there. First of all, I doubt this is a true map from 570 AD, but somebody doing a search.
That map comes from a social studies textbook and is not reliable.
Right.
I can tell you it's probably from McGraw-Hill or Prentice Hall.
And how would you know these things, Paul?
Because every time I review a textbook with Prentice Hall or McGraw-Hill, they have so much misinformation on Islam. They take their instructions from a Muslim Brotherhood center. It used to be called the Center. Oh my gosh, it's been a long time since I've done this work, but no, they make stuff up and actually put it in textbooks. I've got actual documentation of it. I just shared it in our private. I just shared a review of a textbook in our private Skype thing, and anybody who would like that, I will offer it to you. Send me. I don't know how I would do it here.
This is facsimile. This is actually not the actual map, so it's
right,
not really.
You're right. It's a facsimile. It's not an actual map, and this is what. And Paul's absolutely right. When you look at these textbook companies that publish these books, like one of the textbooks, the 7th grade textbook for our state or for our district, has in it. The reason for it talks about Islam is because when we start talking about cultures and things of this nature, you're going to talk about Islam, you're going to talk about Christianity, you're going to talk about Judaism and all these other religions. But these textbook companies, when they let me get back to what I was saying before. I just lost my train of thought. That they said that Islam grew not through the sword, but through trade diffusion. Meaning that they traded so much, and then when they traded, they brought their religion with them. And when people heard about Muhammad, then they rapidly accepted Islam.
So
that's what the textbook teaches.
So there's an actual organization called the Interreligious. Let me get it for you. You can go to this site called CIE.org. They now call themselves the Institute on Religion and Civic Values. They are formerly the Committee on the Council on Islamic Education. And they pretty much determine what is put in your textbooks on Islam. All of your local textbooks have probably gone through, that have to do with social studies in Islam, have gone through their Princeton, McGraw, I can go on, tend to use this organization. And they don't think about it being connected directly to the Muslim Brotherhood, which would make it a dangerous thing to put into our school, since the Muslim Brotherhood is the parent of Al-Qaeda, who attacked us. And they don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, I hate it when that happens, especially when they use their petrodollars and buy majority stakes in these publishing companies, these textbook publishing companies.
And here you have two social studies teachers who are knowledgeable on this, and our bosses don't want to hear it.
No, never did.
And I'm retired, so now I don't have those bosses.
That makes two.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, Elizabeth, are you there, my lady?
Yeah, she's back.
She's back. I don't know if she's sitting by Steve now. I don't know if she found Steve to get a good connection from a cell tower.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
yes,
we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe it's because Steve and I live around the same area, so that's why it's so messed up. But yeah, about that guy, Cameron, I noticed that he messaged me twice, but then he deleted the messages that he sent me. I don't know why, but yeah, so far that's the story with that guy.
Say that again. He deleted the messages that
he's been messaging me through Facebook, and he deleted the last two messages that he sent me.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I don't want to put, because I had that conversation with him last night, and I'm not sure. I mean, can you tell me why has he given you any justification whatsoever as to why he reverted or converted to Islam? I mean, because he told me that he was afraid he was going to come here and he was going to be set up. That was his concern. You're setting me up.
Yeah, it's like I was telling you, maybe he had a conversation with Kenny, and maybe in a similar, because you guys told me not to go to Kenny because of this and that. Maybe Kenny went like, oh yeah, don't go with those guys, because maybe, I'm not sure, but so far what I've been able to tell is that maybe he's doing it because maybe to like this, because he said that his pastor father used to mistreat him when he was a quote unquote Christian before, so maybe he's doing it just to anger his dad. I mean, but that's something that a kid or a teenager would do, right? I mean,
Okay,
he's
so you're
already an
saying
adult, so
okay. So
um,
where's this
yeah,
guy from? He's not from? He said, is he from the United States?
yeah, he's American. He lives in Washington State.
Oh, he does. Okay, because he asked me where I
Yeah,
live, and I said, well, I'm from the United States, and he goes, oh, well, that explains why your show is so Islamophobic, because everybody in the United States hates Muslims. I'm like, really?
yeah, he's a convert to Islam, and he supposedly was Christian before.
Yeah, and his dad, you said his dad was a preacher, and his dad used to beat him,
Yeah, he
so
said
therefore he hates all Christians.
he. I don't recall him saying that he would beat him, but he said that he would really mistreat him because he wouldn't learn like biblical verse. Yeah, basically because maybe he refused to be a good Christian, in which he would have to learn about the Bible, that sort of thing. Like a strict
Ah,
pastor's father, from what I see.
okay, so
Yeah,
we're talking about like he wouldn't be able to memorize enough Bible verses, or you're not exactly
yeah,
sure.
which is kind of strange. Yeah,
Well, I tell you what,
so it's like a very fuzzy story from what he's telling me.
well, they normally are. That's just I mean, that's the sad truth. I tell you what we could do is we could get this guy a one-way ticket to Afghanistan, where he can go to some of these madrasas where they're forced to memorize the Quran, and see how he's treated when he doesn't recite the verses correctly. Do you think they would treat him any better, or do you think they would treat him worse? You don't. It's a rhetorical question, because the bottom line is, have you seen some of the ways that they've treated? We lost Elizabeth. She's over here now. Elizabeth is all over the board here. Let me kick this one. Are you there, Elizabeth? Elizabeth, are you
Yeah,
there?
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, what I was saying was we could probably send him to Afghanistan, one of those madrasas over there, and see how he's treated for not memorizing the Quran correctly. I mean, if that was his argument against Christianity, is the poor treatment of his dad. I mean, come on. It sounds like a cop-out to me. Okay, here is that site Paul was... Let me put this over here. Legacy Teaching Resources. If you guys can see that, this is that site that Paul just was talking about.
That's the site for the Council on Islamic Education, which is also, they call themselves the Interreligious and Cultural Values Site, that supposedly has the right to review textbooks and tell them if they're teaching truth or not, which they use, and they subvert the truth, which is scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when you read a lot of those textbooks that deal with the origins of Islam, and if you notice something, and this is one of the things that was very telling, when they referred to Muhammad, they called him the Prophet Muhammad. They would never
simply call him the prophet. They
right.
Actually do go through the textbook, and they never call Jesus the Christ. They never refer to him as the Messiah, but they will call Muhammad the prophet simply, right, without even mentioning his name.
And yeah, so if you pick up a textbook,
in most of your textbooks these days, that's how it's written. Again, that's approved by this organization. And okay, again, this is part of this is a section that has relations with the Muslim Brotherhood here in the United States.
And this is where, when we start pumping gas into our gas tanks and our cars, and I have 2 huge carbon footprints of automobiles.
I should warn everybody that once you go to this site and you see this, my recommendation is that you take snapshots of it, because it was up as ircv.org. Previous, it was up as cie.org, as you see it currently is. ircv.org all of a sudden disappeared for about a year. So what happened is the person who was running the organization had those direct ties. When he died, their big leader died, and all of a sudden they disappeared, went subversive a little bit more. They were being well known. People like me were announcing who they were on Fox-related news channels, radio channels. So yes, once they start getting attention, so now that they exist, you just have to be very careful.
Yeah, and look at these the emergence of the Renaissance. I wonder how much attribution to the Renaissance they're going to provide. They're going to give to Islam. Oh, here's one that I'm sure is very unbiased: the Crusades from medieval European and Muslim perspectives. Oh, I might have to download that one and look at teaching about Islam and Muslims. You definitely don't want me doing that. Under the Sharia, that under the Sharia, it's prohibited. Well, I guess let me retract that just for a second. It's prohibited from somebody that is not a Muslim to teach somebody that is a Muslim about the Quran. So I would not be able to teach anybody about the Quran. Now, I'm not sure if that includes the history of the Quran or some of the stories that we find, the sources for it that we find in it, or some of the criticisms of it. But if you're not a Muslim, you cannot teach under the Sharia.
I don't believe you're allowed to read the Quran under Sharia as well.
Really? I've never heard of that, but
I'm going to double check that. But yeah,
that
So
would be, well,
even
that
if
wouldn't
you're
be
a
surprising.
lefty, like
What's that, Elizabeth? I didn't hear you.
even if you're a lefty who loves Islam but it's not a Muslim, you still can teach it.
I didn't understand what you said. I'm sorry.
Like, okay, so you're not a Muslim, but let's say that you're maybe a leftist who likes Islam, and like one of those leftists who say that Islam liberates and it's like Muhammad was a feminist and all that. Even if you're someone like that, you still can teach it.
No, they won't let you know. That is the Sharia. You cannot. Well, that's if you look at the Pack of Umar. That's where it comes from. It's the Pack of Omar. The Pack of Omar says that a non-Muslim cannot teach a Muslim about the Quran. And I completely understand why he would come up with that idea, is because if I was to teach the Quran in a classroom to Muslim students in a public school setting, it's much different. But if I was to go to, let's say, a madrasa and teach the Quran, I would be pointing out all of these problems that are inherent with the Quran to the students, and you don't want that. If you want somebody to be indoctrinated into this religion, you don't want somebody providing open criticisms of the Quran, because if there are criticisms, and that's another thing, you cannot criticize the Quran or Muhammad, because that's considered apostasy, and if you do so, you can be punished for that. So if you criticize the Quran or any, what does it say? It says any scholarly consensus that is derived from it, that is considered apostasy. So number one, you can't, in the Pack of Umar, it says that people that are not Muslims cannot teach the Quran to Muslims, and that also to criticize the Quran, so this is what I would be doing, I guess, is considered apostasy. And therefore, at the end of the day, I would get, what was that guy that got his head cut off in France last year? That social studies teacher. Does anybody remember that guy's name?
Samuel Patty.
There you go. Samuel Patty. Yeah, Samuel Patty. I'd get Samuel Pattied. And that's a verb, by the way. Okay, so yeah, look at some of these other things. Images of the Orient, Muslim women through the... I wonder what that is like. I wonder if that's like a WWE manual, where you look at the World Wrestling Federation. That's a bad joke. Teaching about Islam and Muslims and Muslim holidays. You know what? I think we might download some of those and do a show on some of those, just to see how accurate Paul is. Not that
I actually downloaded 4.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna leave that up on that tab open, so at the end of the show I'll go and download some of those things and take a look at them, because they are my favorite 4-letter word, free. Okay, let's get back to what we were discussing. We were discussing the problems with Mecca. Where is it? Was it inhabited? Let me take this banner off here because you can't see it. Let me take that off there. There we go. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Mr. Christian family man. No critical thinking allowed under Islam. Oh, and then daily. What is this? Who is this? Eric, Oh, I know who you are. Yeah, you're from BTR. Well, hello. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you here. Okay, where is it and when was it inhabited? So let's take a look at what the Quran says. Now, remember, Mecca is only mentioned one time in the Quran. One time.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's
by name.
Becca.
By name. By name.
No, it's
Yeah.
Becca. It's not Mecca. Do not lie to the Muslims.
Okay,
It's
could this
Becca.
be stay with the slideshow. Stay with the slideshow. Could this be a later redaction from Becca?
Yeah, we're going to lie to the Muslims.
This is what we were discussing last week because
Becca.
because without the
Not Mecca.
because without the diacritical marks, it could mean anything.
Okay, and yeah, here's what. Okay, I was going to do this before the show, but the letter B in Arabic. What does that look like? So let me put that up there on the screen, and then we'll put the letter. Oh boy, the letter M in Arabic. To see if. Oh my gosh! Come on. That's not. Okay, so why? Okay, for the letter B in Arabic, looks like this. And if John, Isaac, or Adam were here, or if anybody in the chat reads Arabic, that's
Adam is here.
Is Adam here? Or is that? I didn't see Adam.
Adam is here.
Is Adam? I know Adam was in the chat. I don't know if he's there now. I don't. When was the last time he posted?
I read Arabic. What does it say? What's the word?
It's the letter.
Where's the letter?
I just had it up on the screen. What happened?
Oh, could you put it back? I'll tell you what it is.
All right, let me find it. There. Oops, there it is. Right there. No, that's. Golly, why is it over here now? There it is.
That's the ba.
That's the ba. Okay, so that is the B.
Yeah, ba is a B.
Okay, so let's do M.
Me.
See what it looks like. Me. So what does that look like though? Oh my. When we had John Isaac on here, John was taking us through the alphabet, and he showed us. Let me see if I can bring this up here.
Doesn't Steve read that? Does Steve read Arabic?
Steve. Well, Steve is. I don't know. Steve is busy witnessing to people. I don't want to.
I can help you with the alphabet. I know all this stuff.
Okay. So, what? Yeah. There's the N. That's John's.
That's noon.
Icon.
N is noon.
Yeah, that's what John has for his icon. Okay, so the B and the M. There was something about these two letters that he said that if all you have to do in order to modify it, and maybe it only pertains to the name when we're thinking about a B for Becca and M for Mecca. In Arabic, it might be something completely different. I don't know, but he had shown us, and him and Adam both had done this, where they've come on the show and they've drawn the letter, and they've shown where you change it from a B to an M only by adding a small.
Well, it would be the letter in Arabic, and it's just like a little tail on the top that you close it up. If I recall what Adam said, you just close up that letter.
These are different languages. Becca is Hebrew and Mecca is Arabic, so that's also a difference as well. It's like Mahmadim versus Muhammad. Yes, I know they sound similar, but they're not the same thing. And I'm like, I don't know, like for your apologetics, that's just not good apologetics, you know?
Okay, see what Cleo did? That's the difference.
Yeah. Chloe posted that there.
Thank you, Chloe.
Yeah, Cleo, thank you for doing that. Okay, so when we start talking about Becca being mentioned in the Quran, and let's get back to the original point here, where we're talking about Mecca being mentioned in the Quran. It's only mentioned in the Quran one time. Oops, let me put my screen back up here. It's only mentioned in the Quran one time by name. Now there are places that
as they lie, They're lying when they're saying Mecca, the Valley of Mecca. It's not the Valley of Mecca. What is that Arabic word? How do you pronounce it? Can you have Isa pronounce that word in
Which word?
2014 or whatever
Okay,
it is?
let me see it. Let me see. Where's the
Yeah,
word?
4824. Can you let him see that word?
Where? I don't know what word are you talking about?
Well,
It's 4824, right? Can you
That's
show him the Arabic and
that.
let him
Okay,
pronounce it?
this is the citation that was given for today's slideshow. That's what he cited. That's what he cited. Is that?
Well, it's Surah 4824. See that? It's Surah 4824. Can you show them that in Arabic and let him pronounce that word in Arabic?
The word in Arabic is Makkata, Makata.
let me see the word. Where is it?
Yeah, let him see the word.
Put it in the
Golly,
private
would
chat.
you guys slow down
That's
for a second?
Mecca.
Let me get this. 4824. Let me pull it up.
You got some wise students here, Arabic.
4824. Let's pull it down. There we go. And okay, here we go. 4824.
Okay, so it says وهو الذي كاف أيديهم عنكم وأيديكم عنهم ببطن مكة من بعد أن أظفركم عليهم وكان الله بما تعملون بصيرا.
Okay, so
Okay, Makata. What does Makata mean in Arabic? Do you know, Isa? Makata.
It says Mecca.
Okay, so here it is. Okay, here it is. What? Okay, can you see on the screen there, Isa, right here?
I see
Is
it.
this what is this? What letter is this?
That's a calf.
That's okay. So that
A
is
calf is a K sound.
like the K sound. Okay.
It's two Ks because there's a shedda on it, so it's two Ks.
So this makes it two Ks, or this makes it two Ks?
Oh, the one on top. There's a little it looks like a little W on top
Little
of that.
crown.
Like,
Oh, right
on
here.
top of it, and there's a little line on top of that. Yeah, so that little W makes it a double sound.
Yeah.
So
You
it's M,
say it too.
A, and then the last letter is called a tamurbuta, and a tamurbuta is like a ta-ha fusion. So depending on, like, there's a word like salat, like which is prayer, or salat. So it can be pronounced as an H or a T.
Okay. All right. Well, when we get Adam or get John back on the show, I'm gonna specifically ask him to draw that out, because I remember Adam came on the show and he drew it out for us, and we were using side by side examples like we would have here of the word spelled in the Arabic, and it doesn't matter. Let's pop back over to the slideshow then. Okay. So when we look at Mecca being mentioned in the Quran, it's only mentioned one time. Now, if you're the city of the mother of all cities, if it's the mother of all cities, and it's the most important city in Islam in the 7th century, and it's the most important city in the 21st century, you would think that you would have more mentions in your holy book than just one, if you're going to mention it by name. If you look at Jerusalem, that would be an interesting Google. Can somebody Google that in chat or there in the panel? How many times Jerusalem is mentioned in the Bible? It seems to me it's mentioned like 2,300 times in the Bible. As you know, and also keep in mind it's not mentioned one time in the Quran either. And then once somebody gets that, just come up on mic and tell me how many times that appears in the Bible.
700 in the Bible. So you wanted to know how many times in the Bible Jerusalem is said?
Right. Yep.
Okay. I've got 776 in the King James. 767. Jerusalem is mentioned in the whole Bible in the King James.
Okay.
I got 789 in the NASB.
Okay, so you got, how many did you have, Connie?
767.
Okay, and John, you had 789. Do I have 789? You mean to have 790?
Gone once, gone twice.
Yeah. Okay.
If you look at the new American Standard Bible, but the 1995 version, it has 788.
Okay.
So the newer one has 789. So it picked up an extra Jerusalem. I don't know how this happens.
Okay. The boy has 667, and then Christian Family Man, the animal here, you're 669. So you guys are way behind these other two. I don't know what version you're looking at, but
So
the bottom line is, okay, here, go ahead.
So in the Strongs, like in the Hebrew, like in the Masoretic, it's 643 times. So I'm just looking at the Hebrew text just to see whether. So I haven't actually added how many times in the New Testament. So
Okay,
I need to do that as well.
Okay, so if you're just talking about using the Old Testament, you had
I'm
how
just
many?
using the Greek and Hebrew text just to see how many times have we got it in the Greek and Hebrew. Let's do a.
Okay, so the point we're trying to make here. Look at the. Let me put that over there. The point that we're trying to make here is that the city, Jerusalem, is mentioned hundreds of times in the Old and New Testament. 700 times, 600. I mean, you take a number, but it's 650. And Jerusalem is, the most important city. It was the most important city in the Old Testament, and it's the most important city, of course, in the New Testament. This is where all the Jews would have they would make their annual pilgrimages there. It was where the Jewish temple was. Is where Christ was crucified. So Jerusalem is the most important city in the Bible, and it's mentioned hundreds of times. Here, you have it mentioned in the Quran just one time, and that's just in Surah 48, 24. And then if we look at here in Surah 396, the first temple ever set up for mankind was indeed one at Becca, which is is that the Valley of Weeping? I think that's, it doesn't matter. But here you have.
According to the Bible, it is.
Okay, so that would be Petra.
And there's no valleys in Saudi Arabia in that area. There's no valley.
We're getting to that.
All sand. Okay.
I have pictures. Okay. So when we look at this other, I'm sorry, I didn't have this up on the screen. So Surah 396 says Becca, the valley, which is up in Petra. Okay, so when we look at the inferences here in the Quran, none of these verses use the word Mecca. This is only by implication is Mecca used here. So when we look at Surah 396, which is right there, they're assuming that is Mecca, but does not say Mecca. It's supposed to be the mother of all settlements. It's not called Mecca, but it's the mother of all settlements, and that's found twice in the Quran. It's supposedly where Adam and Eve. Now, if Adam and Eve were cast down to Mecca, we would expect to have some sort, and I mean some sort, we would expect to have all kinds, tons of archaeological evidence.
Yeah, vegetation.
Existence for that city. And if the Garden of Eden was there, if you look at Mecca today, or Mecca within the past 1,000 years, and you would say that, oh, that looks a lot like the Garden of Eden, you're a moron. There's nothing even close to that.
Well, I think that's why they claim that the Garden of Eden was in Jannah, and they were kicked from heaven from Jannah.
That's right. Okay,
that's why they changed the location. Yeah.
All right, Connie, you're right with that. Okay, sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They were kicked out of heaven, and heaven was supposed to be where the Garden of Eden was. Yes, and Adam was 90 foot tall. Who knew? Okay.
Hey, Adam, can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
Where you said Mecca is where Abraham lived.
That's where the guy who was on your show yesterday said. He was pretty adamant about it.
Here's the problem. My understanding from the Quran and stuff and the Islamic traditions, he went to visit Ishmael and his wife. And when he got there, Ishmael wasn't there. So he turned right back around. I'm not aware of where he lived. Now, supposedly he went down there and built the Kaaba, but as far as living, I don't know anything that says he lived. I'm aware of him going to visit from where, I don't know, but he went to visit Ishmael, and I think twice the wife said that he wasn't there, and I think the third time he actually told Ishmael to divorce the wife, and I think he did. So that's what I've come across.
Mm. Well, didn't they build the Kaaba together too?
Yeah, that is the story that they went to Mecca and built it, but I don't think that Abraham lived in Mecca with Ishmael. He just went to visit. It's like he dropped him. Hagar got dropped off. They went to Mecca, then he went to visit. I'm going to try to see if I can find where I read that. But that was the story that he went to visit, and the wife said he wasn't home. And it was just amazing that every time the poor guy traveled, who knows how many miles he traveled, his son was never home. And he didn't think about, okay, listen, I'm going to wait. That's okay. I don't have nothing to do. I mean, I just traveled 800 kilometers. Let me sit my sore feet out. He just went right back to where he was at.
And
he
this
did
guy was
that,
over
I think, like
100
three
years
times.
old. I mean, remember, this guy was over 100 years old when he did this. Let me
Got
get
some
down.
good-
Let me get right back down there to Mecca where Ishmael is, and
Yeah, he's got some good
make
stamina.
all the sense in the world. Yeah. No sense.
Islam, lie, lie, lie.
Yeah. Okay. Look at Steve. Steve's in a pretty heated discussion right
Yeah,
now. with
man,
some
he
guys.
is.
I'm glad to be
Yeah,
showing him. Look
showing
at
the
you go,
Quran.
Steve. There you go,
That's
buddy.
what you do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you know, I don't see it doesn't matter. I don't see the guy. Okay, let's get back over to the slideshow. Okay, so it's where Abraham lived. It was where Muhammad was born and lived there until 622 before the Hijra. And it also is where the Qibla is located and became this, or I'm sorry, is what became the Qibla in 624. And this is again where we had that argument yesterday with that doofus on your show, Dr. Kufarphobia. Where I don't, to be honest with you, I have no idea what his argument was. I mean, he was just screaming at us for so long. Yeah, I really couldn't quite make out what he was saying. But anyway, if you have the only reference of Mecca one time, why would Mecca be so important if it's only mentioned one time in the Quran? Okay, so when we look at the Quran and the traditions, it's referred to as the place of the prophet. Now, look at these geographical references here. This is key. It's in a valley, and it has a parallel valley, and this is according to the Sirah of Muhammad from Ibn Ishaq, and then Al-Bukhari mentions it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different times. It supposedly has a stream going through that. Again, that's Bukhari. Outside the ruins is a pillar of salt. That's kind of odd. We don't find any pillars of salt in Mecca or anywhere near or around Mecca today, but we do have all kinds of salt up by where? Oh, I don't know. We call it the Dead Sea, which is just north of, which would be north of Petra. So that would fit right there with the Dead Sea being there. All that salt that sits along. If you've ever been to the or seen the edge of the Dead Sea, the salt, it builds up there, and it just sits around in big old piles. It has trees, and it has grass, and it has fruit, and it has clay and loam. These are things that we were discussing. I don't know if we were discussing this last week or the week before, but we've discussed this several times on the show. Loam is a type of soil that you can grow crops in. It has olive trees. Look at there, 2, 3 different surah passages that say that it has olive trees. You know how many olive trees are in Mecca today? Hold on, let me count. Exactly, 0. There are no olive trees in Mecca. You know how many olive trees were in Mecca 100 years ago? 0. 1,000 years ago? 0. Have there ever been any olive trees in Mecca? No. And the reason why is because there's no water to grow olives.
It's a pile of sand. It's sinking sand.
Yep.
Well, just sand. Sorry, not
You
sinking.
have mountains that are supposed to be overlooking the Kaaba, and this is according to the Sirah of Muhammad, the biography, and of course Al-Bukhari mentions it. So when we look at Mecca today, it's not in a valley, and it has none of these things listed about it because it's too arid and it's too dry. And we look at the mountains of Safa and Marwa today. Oops, wrong way, sorry. They've built... Is somebody talking? I think that's Steve. Let me put Steve on mute. Uh-oh. Do I mute? There we go. Yeah. When we look at the mountains of Marwa and Safa, these aren't mountains. They're just hilltops. And what they've done is they've built this is how tough the Hajj has gotten, folks. They've built this air-conditioned walkway so people can run back and forth between Marwa and Safa 7 times like Hagar supposedly did. But instead of doing it in the 130-degree oppressive heat of Saudi Arabia, you can do it on a flat platform in air conditioning. Ain't that nice? But that's your hills of Marwa and Safa today.
That's nice paganism. They make it nice and cool for everyone.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's look at the.
It's probably like a drive. You could probably drive down there or something. They probably got like a car,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's how. Well, I mean, if you have 1 million people, 3 million people a year. I mean, how many people make pilgrimage to Mecca a year? I mean, so the number is absolutely astronomical. And this is why they would have, and this is one, this is one of the ideas that they had come up to do with all these refugees from Syria or these refugees from Afghanistan, is to say, hey, they have all of these tents right outside of Mecca there that to house people during the Hajj, and they only use them 10 days a year or however long the Hajj is supposed to be. They could definitely, and they house 3 million. Why can't they house these refugees? And Saudi Arabia says, no, we're not going to take them because these people are too dangerous. Oh, okay. Well, let's send them to the United States. What could go wrong with that, right? Okay, so.
And I wonder how much crime they have in there. I wonder if they report it, thefts and molestations and everything. You never hear about that, do you?
No. Well, in a lot of the countries, I know in England, even in, what was it? No, what was it? It was Sweden. I was reading about Sweden the other day where they were reporting that, hold on, I think I have it up here still. Students, hold on, was this?
I have a question. Do you think it's bad that America's taking refugees? I think that's a really beautiful thing that America's doing. It's saying that we stand up for liberty and justice. And, like that, isn't that what the Statue of Liberty says, that we take everyone here? I think it's kind of a really amazing thing about America. And it's really sad that this other place is not doing that. That's kind of what I feel,
Well, they're trying to flood America to kind of like weed us out, to gut us out, and to bring others that have, no understanding of what America stands for. So they're trying to flood us with people that don't know anything about America. So they're actually abusing our goodness, and that's why we need to be closing our borders. Because it's based on abuse. They're abusing our goodness.
Well, in a lot of ways, I would agree with that. If you look at the Afghani relocation program that they did in the closing days of our when we were in Afghanistan, okay, the closing days there, they evacuated 80,000 of those Afghanis. And I believe the number was only 18,000 of them were either U.S. citizens or had those SIV passports. The rest of them were unvetted. They sent 80,000 of these people unvetted from Afghanistan to military bases throughout the world. And of those 80,000, only I think the number was maybe even lower than 18,000, where they weren't supposed to be coming into the country. They just said, hey, I want to get out of Afghanistan. So they got on the plane and they left. So when we start thinking about, the abuse of our immigration, so we allow more immigrants into this country legally than any other country on the planet. That doesn't even include the ones that we're just allowing to come streaming across the border. And a lot of if you look at the border, I mean, I don't want to get political here, but if you look at the border and having it as wide open as it is today, that's just wrong. I mean, you cannot be a country unless you have sovereignty, and you don't have sovereignty unless you control your borders within that country. And if you're allowing anybody to come streaming into your country, unvetted, undocumented, you have no idea who these people are. You do not know what they're bringing with them. You do not know. This is like, if you remember what happened in, what year was that, 79 or 80, where Fidel Castro just opened up all of his prisons and shipped all those prisoners that were either a lot of them were political prisoners. This is true, but a lot of them were rapists, murderers, drug dealers, and they shipped them into Florida. What could possibly go wrong with that? Mariel boat lift.
Yep.
This is the same thing happening here, where we're just opening up our border, allowing them to come streaming through purposely. Oh, by the way, not finishing the wall, and then and then on top of that, you have all of the crime that comes with it, all the fentanyl. I mean, the fentanyl that's coming through that border today. If I had anybody in my family affected by that, I would be suing the federal government pants off for non-enforcement of that border. Because here, hold on, let me make one more point. Andrew brings up a good point here. A lot of these truckers that are coming to into our country today, this is creating this what we call it, the supply chain shortage. A lot of it has to do with the number of truckers, of a shortage of them, and now they're bringing in truckers from these foreign countries into our country to ship the goods that need to in order to help out with that. And then he's saying that the truckers in the United States have to be vaccinated, but the migrants, that's all right, let them come on in. It's garbage. Go ahead.
Thank you. My question I would ask is, I know I'm going to sound naive and I'm going to sound bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, but I have that endless optimism, I guess, as a part of me. Don't you think that if you show love and compassion to other people, because we're talking about human beings here, that it won't be reciprocal? You don't think that they'd be like, oh my God, we respect what we've been given, and do you think also that these people who are refugees here are actually people who have been allies of the United States amidst this situation? I mean, I think, isn't that the military narrative, that a lot of these refugees are people who would be killed in Afghanistan and Syria and things like that? Like, what do you think about that? Is that fair or is that unfair? What do you feel?
Well, I completely agree. Bringing the people in, that's what those SIV visas were for, is to identify those people that assisted our government while we were in Afghanistan, to provide them a safe haven outside of Afghanistan, because anybody that associated with the military government or the governments that existed after the invasion, anybody that was associated with them or had anything to do with assisting the military, namely the people who served as interpreters, they and their families are targeted. And so they were given visas. They call them I can't remember what the word, the letters stand for, the SIV visas, to get out. But in the process, you had all of these other people streaming in there and coming in alongside of these people that are just regular Afghani citizens that just wanted to get out of that hellhole. I don't blame them for wanting to get out of there. But as a country, we cannot possibly absorb that many people who are, number one, undocumented, number two, unassimilated to our culture. Because when we look at some of these people that are coming into our country, they're still practicing Islam, the Afghanistan way. And what I mean by that is a lot of them are still marrying young girls. And when we talk about young girls, we know where that comes from. Many of them are still beating their wives, and we know where that comes from. So you if you're going to come into the country, you have to, number one, have a reason. And then number two, you have to assimilate, meaning that you have to respect our laws and our culture and do the best that you can to assimilate to that. Now, there's nothing wrong with practicing your own cultures in our country as long as it doesn't break U.S. laws. And beating your wife is a violation of our laws. And you said the second thing, isn't it kind to bring people into our country? Of course it is. And this is why I said initially that we immigrate. We allow we bring in more immigrants than any other country in the world every single year. But that does not mean that those people, just because they want to come into our country for economic reasons or what have you, that they should be able to come in unauthorized by breaking into our country, streaming across the border without having the proper documents. This is why we have an immigration system. If you don't have an immigration system, what you're basically doing is you're cutting in line in front of those people who are actually obeying our laws. And it's not fair to those people who do obey our laws. And the biggest thing there is it clearly demonstrates that you don't have any respect for our nation's laws. And if you don't have respect for our nation's laws, you're not going to assimilate to our country in the way that.
Here's something for Dr. Kabir. Now, I know you got a great heart, and I admire that. But I would say that there's probably, 2, 3, 4, 5 billion people in the world that would love to come to America. Does that mean that we should take them? Because let's face it, the majority of people, if not all of them, come here for economic reasons because their countries are, let's just face it, they're shitholes. So if we're going to be nice, then let's just let them all come in.
I just think I understand there's resources and you want to do it in reason. I completely understand. I just think that we want to try to be as compassionate as we can in dealing with this situation. We don't want to throw people away because of whatever background or ethnicity or anything like that. But I understand there are rules. I get that. Like I'm not, and I understand there are resources too. And hopefully we try to do it the most best legal way that we can. And that's the thing. Like even people from South America, I wish we had a better legal system for that, because a lot of people from South America should be able to come here because there's a lot of terrible cartels, that are running the show there, and people need safety and support and love. And I do understand. Yeah, well, I will do my best with the resources I have. I'm a philanthropist, and I will do the best I can. I might not be able to help everyone, but I will help as much as I can. So
sure. Yes. And I would hope you would do that through your church or a religious organization. Okay, where were we? All right, let's get back on topic here.
Instead of it being political.
Yeah.
See, that's the point, Isa. See, when you get evil politicians that are doing it, okay, that's when it ends up hurting America's people, because they just let them flood in. Good, we'll flood them in, and we'll get all this money, and pay them like Biden's saying we're going to pay each of them $400,000, and we've got Americans sleeping on the streets. There's something wrong with that. That's why Eric said you do it through, like your affiliated mosque or wherever you want to go to, or synagogue, church, to give, to make that difference there, instead of the government going, okay, well, we'll take it over. No, we're seeing the abuse of them taking it over. They're not even protecting the borders of Texas right now, and all the borders of South America, United States.
Yeah, here's a great point by Bring It Boys. One person can't save those who are not in trouble. And a lot of these people and we have a process for people who are suffering political persecution and providing them amnesty here. There's a process for that, but these people are completely bypassing the process. And then when they get here, they claim amnesty when they really don't need amnesty. Their country just needs to improve. Okay, let's just get back to what we were doing before. All right. Oops. Back here. So we've already talked about the map evidence or lack thereof for Mecca in the 7th century. We've talked about how the Quran and all of the Islamic literature, whether it's the Sirah or the Hadith, do not support the existence of, or Mecca, do not describe accurately Mecca in that literature, meaning that it does, it talks about the vegetation, it talks about it being a major trade route, which you don't have. In order for it to be a trade route, raise armies, things that weren't mentioned there, you have to have water. You have to have water to grow food. You have to have water to provide for the animals, and you have to have the soil. It mentioned the soil. You don't have that in Mecca. In Mecca, all you have is this barren wasteland, if I may. But let's look at the earliest mention of Mecca in any type of literature, and this comes in the Apocalypse of Pseudo-Methodus, whatever. It comes in this book here, whatever it is, and that happens during the reign of Caliph Hisham. Now, Hisham is, isn't he the son of Ali? Am I right on that? Or maybe it can't be that, because it's 741. I'm way off on that. Never mind. But this dated 741. Now, keep in mind, Muhammad died in 630. 630. And this is the first mention of Mecca anywhere in any literature outside of a hadith, and the hadith are developed 2.5 centuries after, or finally compiled 2.5 centuries after Muhammad. So you don't have any mention of this city in any extra is when we talk extra biblical here, we have extra Quranic or extra Islamic literature, any mention of Mecca at all until 741. And then we look at the maps. You don't have any of the maps showing Mecca until 900 AD. What is that, 270 years? No. Yeah, that's 270 years after the death of Muhammad before Mecca even shows up on any map. And we look at Dr. Patricia Corona. She says that the trading documents refer to the towns of Taif, which is south and east of Mecca, Yathrib, which is Medina, Khaybar, but they never mention in these trading documents, they never mention Mecca, but they'll mention Taif, they'll mention Yathrib, Medina, and they'll mention Khaybar, but they do not mention Mecca. Now, if Mecca is the mother of all cities and it was supposed to be on one of the major stops along the trade route, why is it not mentioned any documents, any of them, before that time? Okay, and when we look at the first inscription mentioning Mecca is, again, over 100 years, 111 years after the death of Muhammad. And we already talked about the Pseudo-Methodius Continua Byzantia Arabica. And it says down here, it talks about Mecca as they consider it the home of Abraham in the desert between Ur of Chaldeans and Kara, the city of Mesopotamia. And then it says, let's see here, the original Mecca was located in southern Turkey in Ur. So when we look at these writings here, we can deduce that they are not in Mecca today. They're too far north, much too far north, right? But maybe a second Mecca. We don't know. Okay, when we look at modern Mecca, Connie, when we look at the modern Mecca, this is what it looks like.
Yep.
Look at that big old tower. Woo-hoo.
Man,
absolutely huge. Yeah.
Only because the Kaaba is so teeny tiny. You know, it really shows you that the whole thing is just the construction of men, the works of men's hands.
Well, this is what your petrodollars are buying now. And I forgot to mention earlier that your petrodollars pay for a lot of these textbooks today that Paul was alluding to. They have these countries from Saudi Arabia have huge investments in these textbook publishing companies that we teach our kids with. I wanted to make sure I got that out there. Okay, so when we look at modern Mecca today, this is what it looks like. It has the world's fourth highest building. Look at that, the world's fourth highest building sitting right outside the Kaaba. And it has the largest clock face. And the reason why they're doing this is that they're trying to get away from Greenwich Mean Time and go to Mecca Mean Time. So Mecca would be the standard from which all time begins throughout the rest of the world. Right now, if it's...
wow.
I wouldn't even be able to tell you what is in Greenwich Mean Time today. What is the Greenwich Mean Time right now, Dominic?
21:32.
21:32. Okay, so that's Greenwich Mean Time right now. But what that would do is that would back it up. That would probably make it like 23:32 right now in Mecca. I think Mecca's 2 hours, maybe 3 hours back. I might be wrong on that. I can't remember how far back we were from.
So why is it so important for them to deal with time?
Well, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. Why would it be?
Well, I know. I'm just asking the question.
Okay.
I know why.
Well,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it's the same thing that we use our dating system, our annual, when we talk about years. We talk about being at 2021 CE instead of AD, because when we used to say BC, before Christ, and then AD, which is Anno Domini, which is the year of our Lord, that's where we came up with that calendar. Well, now, since it's become, when we start thinking globally and educating people globally using history, we would use what they call it, CE, the Common Era, and then you had, which is AD, and then you would have BCE, which is before the Common Era. So in using before Christ, instead of using before Christ, now we're using before the Common Era, which begins at the year 0, the birth of Christ, and then you go to CE, which is the Common Era, which replaces AD. So when you look at controlling that language to conform universally across different cultures, different religious systems. Instead of saying in the year of our Lord or before Christ, you just say before the common era or the common era. Well, here, this is again a way to control the time. Instead of saying, okay, it's what was it, Dominic, 21:34 there at Greenwich Mean Time. Okay. And then all the other clocks are set according, each time zone is set according to that. You're controlling the time. You're saying, well, that's the center of the time. That's the beginning of the time. Now they're moving that over to Islam, saying the Islamic culture is now going to be the dominant culture on the planet. And we're going to go by Mecca Mean Time as instead of the Greenwich Mean Time. So it's a way of dominating the culture through history and through, just something as simple as time. It's just one of the ways to do that.
So they want to dominate the whole world like that, not just the Arabs, right?
Yeah, that's the goal of Islam. Is
now,
everybody found in need of Mecca. Sure.
Yeah. Now, you remember in the book of Daniel, that's what the Antichrist does. He wants to change times and seasons, but time, so that's like a forerunner of the Antichrist himself. He who sets up the desolation that makes the idol that makes desolation.
Well, we don't have George here. We don't have Ed Van Halen here. We don't have all these guys that talk about the end times and how Islam fits that. They would probably.
Well, I am bringing it up.
Okay, well, I'm saying that's something that they would love. Those guys are always talking about that kind of stuff and incorporating it into that.
Well, the Big Ben, you made that point that they want to change it. So that should make all of us Christians that know the Word of God thinking about Daniel, because that's what that evil last guy wants to do, is change time.
The Mecca clock doesn't sound as good as Big Ben. I don't think. I don't think it has the same kind of ring to it as as Big Ben. It's not really.
Maybe they'll call it the praised one.
Yeah, the Ahmed time. All right, let's get back to the slideshow. Okay, so here you have Mecca today, and look at here. This is here we go. Look at that. That's call to prayer right there during the Hajj. Look how many, they just...
Look at all those termites.
Yeah, look at all them people down there. They look like, when you're flying on a plane, you look down and see how small things actually look like a bunch of ants. Okay, so the future Mecca, this is what it's supposed to look like in the future. All of these buildings right here, these are... I don't call them high-rise apartment buildings, but these are buildings to house people during the Hajj, and this is what they are building. Here's the Kaaba, and here are all these other skyscrapers that they're building to house other people. This is kind of an artist's rendition of what they're supposed to get people back here from Saudi Arabia looking at their planned building here. So they're going to be building all of these buildings out here in the desert, and then expand it out, continue to expand it out, of course, as Islam grows throughout the world and needs to accommodate larger and larger numbers of people during the Hajj. But why would you have this sudden expansion of Mecca? What's the hurry? The one thing that we've looked at several times is when you're building buildings this tall, you have to have, I would not want to be the one putting this part of the building. To be honest with you, I wouldn't want to be the guy to put this part of the building up if you do not have a solid foundation. In order to get a solid foundation, you have to dig deep down into the rock in order to build something that high. And when you dig deep down into the rock, what you would expect to find, if this city is as old as they say it is, don't you think that you would find artifacts when you do that? Doesn't that make sense? If you look at some of the historical sites that are there right now, you have, is this Aisha? Khadijah. This is where Khadijah was supposedly lived. This is supposedly where Muhammad was born. But all of these other locations, when we talk about Mecca at the time of Muhammad in the 7th century, it cannot, you're not getting anything out too far because it cannot be that big of a town. And the reason why it can't be that big of a town is because they don't have any water, folks. And if you don't have any water, you can't grow any food. And if you can't grow any food, you cannot feed large populations of people. So therefore, Mecca could not have been a city as large as they say it was, or important as they say it was, primarily because of the lack of water there. So why digging? Why all of this building here? What do you do when you dig and you don't find anything? Well, you just keep on building, right? But if you found something, what would happen? What would happen if they found something?
It'd be all over the news.
You're exactly right. If they found something in this city when they were building this building here, now look how deep they have to dig and how close it is to the Kaaba. Or if they're digging over here or back in here, don't you think that while they were digging during this time, they would have found something?
Haven't they even replaced the Kaaba like 20 odd times? Like
have they,
as well.
Have they done? Say that again.
It's something like that stupid. That they've replaced the Kaaba like 20 odd times. Like they've redecorated it like so many different times. It's like it's stupid.
I don't understand what you're saying.
I think he's trying to say the Kaaba has been destroyed. I don't know how many times, but it's been destroyed more than once.
Yeah.
Right.
So
destroyed and rebuilt. All right.
It's not even the original Kaaba. It's like, so yeah.
Yeah, you're right. When we talk about the Kaaba itself, it has been destroyed and rebuilt several. I don't know how many times it's been rebuilt, but during that, when they would rebuild it, you would think that they would find some type of archaeological evidence underneath it.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
If you're building something like this, or this walkway between Marwa and Safa, when they built that, don't you think that they would have found some type of archaeological evidence from the 7th century underneath that rock when they were laying the foundations for that? And if they did, don't you think that would be on display in some type of museum someplace? And if I was an archaeologist, this is someplace that I would love to go on a dig for. If you found something that supports the existence of Mecca in the 7th century, you would be famous all around the Muslim world. You'd be paid all kinds of money in these petrodollars. But the fact is that they don't have any evidence. They haven't found any evidence. And what they're doing right now is any evidence that might have existed, they're cementing it over. They're building buildings on top of it. Are you being able to find any type of archaeological evidence underneath these buildings right here anymore?
Nope.
Nope. Why? Because these kids
They're hiding it.
Yeah, exactly, Connie. They're hiding the evidence.
I mean, Islam isn't only just a pack of lies, but now they're hiding any truth that may be found in that area. It's so demonic, you know.
Even because they've dug stuff up in the UK, and even if you do dig stuff up, you'd at least leave it. But there's nothing there to actually leave, so there's nothing there for them. So you can go into like some early buildings and you can see some like Roman ruins under like a glass floor, but there must be nothing in Mecca because it's just desert, just sand. So yeah,
you would expect to find a lot more. You know what they found? Here's what they found. To date, the oldest thing that they have found there is parts of an Ottoman fort that existed at the end of the Crusades. That's it. They have found nothing else there. Nothing. So if you don't find anything for, what would that be, 600 years? Almost 600 years?
After Muhammad,
you have a problem. You have you have a big time problem trying to support the existence of Mecca through just archaeology alone. If you look at what they do in Jerusalem today, the Temple Mount itself is controlled by the Waqf, which is an Islamic group, and they have been digging under the Jerusalem temple or underneath the Temple Mount, to the point where some of the walls are almost ready to collapse in on top of them. And they've been hauling a lot of that stuff out in big dump trucks, and just dumping it without going through it. Well, Jews are going out and have been going through it, and they're finding all kinds of artifacts from 2,500 years, 2,500 years.
The temple sifting project.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
That would be a good show to make. That'd be a good show to do, Eric.
Temple, what's it called again? Temple Sifting Project.
The Temple Sifting Project. But I think Dr. Scott Stripling, because he's digging up Shiloh at the moment. So they use a process called wet sifting, where they put the soil and then they drain water over it, and like the artifacts stay there whilst the soil kind of drains through. So they use like wet sifting.
Well, I tell you what, let's do a show. Let's do a show on artifacts that we found from excavations in and around Jerusalem. And then every time that we find an artifact that supports the existence of Jerusalem, according to the biblical narrative, we'll compare that to an artifact that we find from Mecca. Supports the existence of Mecca in the 7th century.
Sounds great.
That would be a lot of fun. I mean,
because it would really expose them that there is nothing that they can show any proof of anything.
And this is the point. This is the point
exactly
that we're trying to make, is that there is zero proof. Now, we're not going to have enough time to get to the some of the things that Muslims have used to provide evidence for Mecca today. We'll probably have to finish that up either this Tuesday or maybe next Sunday. It all depends. But even those arguments don't hold water in the final analysis. Okay, so this is the next slide. So let's just, I don't know, do we have enough time to get through these? We get about 15 minutes, 14 minutes. Looking at major claims for Mecca in the 7th century. Let's take
just go 5 hours.
All right,
I know, man. We're here. We're here. We can shut down Blog Talk Radio in 15 minutes and keep on chugging along, man.
We lost Connie.
We wait all week long for this, Eric. 2 hours is so short.
Okay.
Connie, the funny thing was, I only meant to do like an hour show.
Oops, I hate it when that. I mean, think about that. I mean, okay. And I think we said this before we went live, but we got. Did I say what the new nickname for what Islamophobia is? Did I say that?
Junior. Yeah, you said it. What was it?
We're gonna call him Kenny Junior.
Kenny Junior. Yeah. KJ.
That's your. You're gonna have to rename. Instead of more names than it's gonna be more hours.
I'm trying to beat CP. I'm gonna do an 8-hour weekend, a marathon.
I don't know how you would do that, to be honest with you. And keep people on point. You know, you would have to take like intermission breaks or something every 2 hours or so, just to stretch. Okay, so the first thing we have here is the Samaritan Astir. This is dated to 200 BC, and this is a writing. Let's see. In this, it says, all the sons of Nebaioth reigned from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates, and they built Mecca. So this is dated to 200 BC. So we have a clear indication of the word Mecca right here. When you look at the British rabbi and Orientalist is kind of a nasty word for Christian missionaries. In 1927, believed that the Astir was archaic, and it was an early stage in Samaritan thought and literature. And he proffered a date no later than 200 BC. So when they start dating this writing, they're saying it couldn't have existed 200 years or any later than 200 BC. But Dr. Morris challenges this date, suggesting that the authors lived under Muslim rule. That's the key thing there. Can they write anything that would usurp or contradict what is, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I just got your message, Connie. I have no idea. Includes conversations with Muslims, Jewish scholarship, and two other specialists proposed date ranges for the austere from the late 10th century to the 11th century. So when we look at this writing, it is not dated to 200 AD or BC. It's dated to the 10th century. This is something that it would be akin to what we discussed a couple of weeks ago, which was the Gospel of Barnabas. You know, we've all heard about the Gospel of Barnabas and how this is supposed to be some type of affirmation for for Jesus not being crucified, and is some type of prophetic book towards prophesying of Muhammad. But the problem is that it's been proven to be a forgery, and that appears to be the same thing for this Samaritan Aster. Okay, Diodorus. Here is a first century Greek historian, actually first century BC Greek historian. And here you have him mentioning Mecca in his first century writings. He's quoting Agatharseeds.
Are you showing us this?
No, I'm not. Doggone it. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Agatharseeds. How do you pronounce that? Agatharseeds? Agatharseeds?
Agatharseeds?
Agatharseeds. That's close enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so he's quoting Agatharseeds, who lived in the 2nd century BC, where it talks about a sacred temple has been established there, was highly revered by all the Arabs, and is also mentioned by Ptolemy the Second, which dates from the 3rd century BC, where it says out of the Gulf of Aqaba. Descriptions of Agatharseeds so he mentions what Agatharseeds refers to. And here's what Agatharseeds says. This is Bay or Gulf somewhere south of the Gulf of Aqaba that runs inland about 500 stadia, which is about 90 kilometers. But when you look at the mouth of it, it's too craggy for large ships to go in. So the temple, not the Kaaba, which was revered by all Arabs, is what's being mentioned here. So when we look at on a map and impose this upon a map, we can see Agatharseeds' temple for all Arabs is at the mouth of the Gulf of Aqaba. Now, here is the Gulf of Aqaba. Mecca would be clear down. Actually, it'd be a lot further south. I can't even get it on here yet. It would be much further south than what it is here. So it's located 90 kilometers from Tiran Island. So this is a known location that's mentioned by Agatharseeds. So look how far it is from the island, 90 kilometers. And you have a wadi that also fits the description. The wadi, what is that called? Anodia is there. Now, if you put this on a big map, this is the region that we were just looking at a second ago. So where is this wadi in relation to Mecca? Well, if you go north, here's the Gulf of Aqaba. Here is Medina. Here's Khaybar. And here's, well, this is actually Medina. Medina Saleh is right up here. This is Yathrib. This is Medina today. So when we look at the wadi, it's clear up here. Now look at this. It's clear up here. It's not
My goodness.
where Mecca is supposed to be. Where's Mecca? Mecca is clear down here. Now, how far is that? Well, let's take a look. 586 miles is how far it is. So you're only off a little, you know, that would be like going from Chicago to...
Maybe Mohammed had a plane.
That's just ridiculous how far off they are there. Yeah, so here you have this distance right here is 10 times the distance that is described in the writings of Agatharseeds and Ptolemy. Because so when you look at here, it's clear up here. This is 90 kilometers, and then this is 900 kilometers. So it's 900. It's 10 times the distance. So it's not referring to Mecca when they talk about a temple that all Arabs had gone to. Let's see here. Highly revealed by all Arabs, and that also include Arabs of the Hijaz and further south. No, because this is during the Roman era, and as late as AD 125, there simply weren't Arabs further south than Arabia Petraea. When you start talking about people describing Roman regions. Let's just make sure we word that correctly. I'm not saying that Arabs didn't exist in southern Saudi Arabia at this time, but when we talk about the Roman Empire and the descriptions of the Roman Empire,
there wasn't anything to conquer there. That was like,
why are you going to go down there?
Yeah, there wasn't
water.
There wasn't anything to conquer there, so I thought I might as well come back.
Do you guys know? Have you guys ever heard of a comedian by the name of Sam Kinison? Anybody heard of this guy?
No.
Sam Kinison. He lived back in the 80s. This guy was absolutely hilarious, and he would talk about. He was, I guess when you could make fun of people. They were having a famine in. It wasn't Somalia. What is the Sudan? I think it was in southern Sudan, and people are dying of starvation because there's no water. People are dying, and if you look at it for intensive purposes, they live in the middle of a desert. And he's sitting there screaming in the microphone. He goes, "Look here, we have deserts in." Because his whole proposal is that to solve this problem of all these people starving was just send them a bunch of U-Hauls. And you say, well, how does that prevent people from solving? He's like, look, we have deserts in our country, but people don't live in these deserts. And the same thing applies here. People don't live in these deserts. Why? Because there's no food. The reason why there's no food? Because there's no water. And if you look at the average annual rainfall in Mecca, it's only a couple inches a year. Was it Ethiopia, Nim? Was it? Yeah, you're probably Ethiopia. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was Sam Kinison on World Hunger. Yeah, and it was funny the way that he told the story, because he wasn't mocking the people who were dying. I mean, I guess that's kind of an important part to understand. But he was just saying, hey, look, we have deserts here, but we don't live in them. So I'm going to buy you a U-Haul so you can move. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Pliny the Elder. In the book Gorios, Regio, I don't even know how to pronounce that. And he talks about, let me see here. There was something key here. Let's see. Pliny's description of the Arabian Peninsula is cogent, sometimes corroborated by other ancient writers. There's no reason to think that Pliny himself did this is the part right here. He never did the field work in Arabia. This is an important part to understand. Pliny only wrote of what people had borrowed their writings. Let's just put it that way. And then look what it says here. After the Dogs River, according to Juba, there is a tribe, the Dabangorios district, Mount Orsa, with its harbor. Okay, and then in 1970, the geographer Herman von Weschmann proposed that it was territory belonging to the Quraysh, as well as Mecca. Its environs would then literally mean which belongs to the sons of Quraysh. All right, so what is the problems with that? There's no room left for the Quraysh there. Persia Corona says that the term sons of Quraysh, when you start examining the language, is faulty. It's the name of the tribe, but it wouldn't make sense of anywhere. So when we look at the geography of Pliny citing Juba following the Arabian coast, they're talking about following the coast not down on the west side of Saudi Arabia along the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba, but they're talking about following the coast along the Persian Gulf, which is on the east side. So that's where they think that this reference exists. And of course, the most popular is Ptolemy's, and this is what the guy last week was trying to cite. And I think this guy in Kufarphobia's room yesterday was yelling at us about talking about Ptolemy, his writings. But here you have Claudius Ptolemy. He's a Greek cartographer, geographer, and his writings are very popular. He lived in the 2nd century CE, or what we Christians call AD, and he gives actual coordinates to Makaraba. Let me pronounce that, Makaraba, and these are the coordinates that he gives. Now, the problem with these coordinates is that they're not based off of grid or longitude and latitudinal coordinates that we have today. We have a different system of expressing latitude.
90 seconds.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to go over on Blog Talk Radio. I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to end the show over here. Thank you for coming. And End episode. There we go.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Blog Talk Radio.
Blog Talk Radio. Oh my gosh. All right. Boy, I think you know a little too much about Sam Kinison. I tell you, if his sense of humor was very crass. He was actually, if you guys don't know this, Sam Kinison, before he became a comedian and one of the most nasty comedians that you could possibly imagine, he used to be a preacher. He wasn't a Baptist. I think he was not a apostolic. No, apostolic. What are the people who do all the dancing in the aisles and shouting?
Charismatic.
He was a charismatic preacher, right? He was a charismatic preacher. But my gosh, that man was funny. Okay, anyway, enough of Sam Kinison.
No wonder he switched.
Well, he'd been married, and that's one thing they always talked about is how enough about Sam Kinison. Don't.
It put a smile on your face when you were about to say about him.
Yeah, he's just that's okay. That's the word right there that I was looking for.
Pentecostal. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't Google him.
They're charismatic too at times. So yeah.
Well, I mean, he was. All right, let's go. So back to this. Okay, so he gives the coordinates. All right, so let's stay with me on this. Oopsie. And if you look at Ptolemy's map here on the right, where if you were going to use those coordinates, where is Makaraba? It's right here. Isn't that great? The problem is that Mecca is actually in the opposite direction from Yathrib.
Wow.
Medina. So he's off in the direction. Now it gets worse for him as we go on here. So Macabre is Mecca, then Ptolemy put it in the wrong place, if that's supposed to be what it is. And that very well may be, because one of the claims is that he didn't know how big Arabia was. So why do people think this? Well, if you look through history, a lot of these historians, to include French historians, German historians, Prussian historians, a lot of these guys support Makaraba as being Mecca. But the problem is it's garbage in, garbage out, because they start with the supposition is that is where that is Ptolemy is referring to Makaraba. But when you actually tear this thing apart, you find something much different. And this is what Dan Gibson does. This is why I just absolutely love reading a lot of what Dan Gibson does. And if there's any way that you can support his ministry, I would ask that you do that, because he does a great job at that. If you notice, Gibson says that if you notice that Ptolemy mentions a lot of other city locations, and these city locations he gets correct, and they're well-known locations today. And then he also lists other rivers and 3 coastal cities that are there today. And he matches these towns and these cities along these rivers, which still exist today, and he overlays them on a map. So if you look at this map here, this is where Gibson overlays what Ptolemy had said in his writings. So let me go back. There we go. So if you look at where Mecca is, if you were going to overlay those, you would put them clear up here. Now notice, Ptolemy, according to his coordinates, put Makaroba, or what people are calling Mecca, clear over here. So that still does not work if you overlay it. So what he did was he took the rivers to the locations, which are known locations today, to obtain a correct map of Arabia. And in doing so, and this is what I was just mentioned before, when he was looking at Arabia, he did not understand how big Arabia was. Actually, Ptolemy, I mean, when we look at, this is a great point. Oh, here we go, Mr. History teacher himself. When we look at Christopher Columbus, when he went out initially exploring for an alternate trade route to Asia, he was using the size of the globe that Ptolemy had imagined. Ptolemy's globe was 27% smaller than what the globe actually is. When he mapped things out, it was 20% smaller than what the Earth actually is. So, of course, all of his figurings were going to be off. So when Columbus lands in Santo Domingo, which is modern-day Dominican Republic, Haiti, you think, hey, we're in India, or we're in we're in India, so we travel around the world. And so Ptolemy is the same thing, doesn't understand the vast size of Arabia, just as he didn't understand the vast size of the globe itself, gets the locations incorrect. So by shrinking Ptolemy's map southward to accommodate the desert there, you find Macaroba, however you want to pronounce it, I don't care how you pronounce it, is even further south. Now, if you look at what Dr. Persia Corona says, is that she wrote a book, Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam, and in that book she talks about this, and she said that it was situated again in the wrong place, and that the word Macaroba, am I pronouncing this Macaraba? Is that how you pronounce it? Macoraba? Is that right? Anybody want to correct me on that? No? Okay, that's fine. And her conclusion is that the name of Macaroba has nothing to do with Mecca, and that the location by Ptolemy for Macaroba in no way dictates identify of the two. So Dr. Corona says that can't be true either. And I'm not going to get through the etymological origins of the word either, because it doesn't really matter. Okay, so what can we conclude? Why are we doing historical critique? Well, the number one, if you look at the geographical difficulties, you just can't ignore them. You have three major civilizations around Mecca are 600 miles too far north. So when you talk about the people of Abd and Talmud, and they're just they're way off. You have no maps in the 6th or 7th century. Mention Macarena. Is that Macarena? There we go. It's Macarena. Anyway, let's see. Why are we bringing this up? The Nobel Peace Prize most corrupt achievement out there today. If anybody actually deserves it, it would be Trump, but he'll never see it. That's probably true. He was nominated like 3 or 4 times for it, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so there's no maps for the city of Mecca, so that's very telling. So looking at the internal evidences of the Quran itself, it demonstrates that Mecca cannot possibly be the cities described in the Quran. If you look at maps, Mecca does not exist. And the trade route theory is completely debunked by Dr. Persia Corona when she showed that you don't offload goods on the east coast of Arabia and then transport them across to Arabia and northward, when you can just go ahead and sail around the entire Arabian Peninsula. That just doesn't make any sense to do that. And then there's other problems with Mecca. It's only referred to one time in the entire Quran, one time. And the traditions suggest that there was a lot of vegetation in Mecca, meaning that it can feed armies, it could support a civilization, when there's little to none. And the reason why is there's no water out there. The earliest reference to Mecca places it in southern Turkey, which is way too far north. And it looks like the Muslims of Arabia are now trying to cover up any archaeological evidence, because they're building everything on top of what is supposed to be the most sacred site, sacred city in their religion. And the reason why they're doing that is because they know that there's nothing down there. And if there was something down there, we would most certainly see it today. And then every claim for 7th century Mecca earlier is debunked, is easily debunked. So there you go. If you want a copy of that slideshow, guys, go ahead and email me, and I'll be more.
I sent you an email for your last one. I don't have PowerPoint, but didn't you say you can send it in a text style or something like that?
I can send it in Google Slides. I'll post it. I'll put it in our share folder, Google folder.
Okay, thanks.
Drive, and then you can access it, and it'll come out in Google Slides.
Okay, and your other one too. I forget what it was, but I wanted that one too that you offered.
Okay, I'll put them both in the drive. If anybody else wants them, here is my.
Is there a cheap PowerPoint that one can get? Because isn't it pretty expensive, the PowerPoint? Yeah, to buy the application.
If you buy Microsoft Office, that includes PowerPoint, for
That's the big
PowerPoint,
thing.
Excel,
You can use
Word.
like an open source version, like was it LibreOffice or something like that? Or if you want to, is it LibreOffice you can use if you kind of just to open PowerPoint presentations.
Can you send a link on that in our private chat? Is that cheaper?
You can send it
It's
PPS.
source.
Eric, you can send it PPS PowerPoint show. You could package it so they can see it as a show rather than having to open it as a PowerPoint.
Well, if you open it up in Google, though, you can open it up in Google Slides, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Google Slides, is that an application like on my phone?
Okay.
You have to go to Google.
Because I'm ignorant, I don't know.
Well, when I post it in the Drive,
Yes,
and you right click it, just right click it, and it'll ask you open with, and just put open with Google Slides, and it'll open up using that program, and it'll open up.
Oh, I gotcha. Thanks. Okay.
In your browser. Hopefully, if it doesn't, we'll figure something else out. I can save it as a PDF or something like that and send
So
it.
there is a free version of Microsoft. I think where you just look at the slides and actually not.
What's it? What is that?
Office.
What's it called? Open Office.
Yeah,
But
so
you can't save it in that format.
Open Office is like a open source version of.
Okay.
Of PowerPoint. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
one way or
and then
another.
you can't change it, which is fine for me. But yeah, okay.
Okay.
I mean, we just don't want to buy that Google. The whole coot and caboodle. Yeah, Ron doesn't want to buy it, which is fine for me. I'm good with that.
You're supporting Bill Gates and that.
I know, right? Yeah, I think that's his main thing.
Hey, Connie, there
Yes,
are
sir.
several open source Microsoft Office alternatives.
That you can interact with, like for PowerPoint?
Yeah, because for
Okay.
instance, I use Excel, but I don't have Microsoft Office. I mean, I have an old version from 2007, but I'm not going to spend all that money. So, and I think there's also another one. I think it's called WP, and these are all free, and they do have like pretty much the same thing that Microsoft has. Like you'll have the Excel, you'll have the word processor, and then you'll also have like a PowerPoint portion. So, and I posted a link on the private chat to the open source.
Okay.
And
Thank
these are
you,
all
John.
open sources, so they're free.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, I
And you know
sure do
me, I like
appreciate
free.
that. Yep. It helps.
That's my favorite 4-letter F word. I don't know why you're thinking something else because that your mind's out of the gutter.
Well, you said other 4 letters, so you put our brain in the gutter there,
I know.
Eric.
Stop it. Stop. All right. Does anybody have anything Paul, do you have anything you want to add? DL hasn't said anything the entire show.
DL's been quiet.
Where did Paul go? Paul's not
okay,
here.
yeah, I'm looking at the wrong screen. Yeah, Paul's evident. I got to call him later because we need to work something else out as far as advertising.
Yay.
Isa and Dominic, thank you guys for coming. John and Connie, of course, I always appreciate you guys coming and contributing. DL, I always appreciate when you contribute.
Does DL have anything to say?
I don't know.
DL.
Where's DL?
Is he even here?
DL, well, I don't know. DL.
We awaiteth his wisdom.
He's one of these guys that tries to multitask way too much sometimes. Because I remember he would call in the show on our Tuesday night, and he would be working nights, and he'd be doing something at work, and at the same time he's sitting there trying to, contribute to the show. So he can do it. It's just sometimes I guess it might be overwhelming for him. Who knows?
So Eric, you said you're going to do a show on comparing the archaeological support that we have for the Bible versus the non-support for Islam?
Yep. I think we can do that. So we would, and Dominic, I'm going to need your help with that one.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through the sifting project.
The temple sifting project.
Yeah, the temple sifting. I'll put that.
It was done by, I think, Dr. Scott Stripling.
Right.
Man, that would be a great show. I look forward to that.
Yeah, just for the the entertainment value itself with that. To let me the temple sifting project.
The historic value. I mean, it's like a gold mine these days of Israel, of what they find underneath the temple. And
yeah, the Temple Mount sifting project.
Wow.
Here it is. Yeah,
I
so
think I
what
have
we'll
a few
do
books.
is oh my goodness, this is cool. Look at this. This is neat. Oh yeah, I'm
oh
gonna have
wow!
some fun with that.
Can you send that link to us and for everybody to have that link?
Yep.
That would be so cool to have. Yeah.
Go ahead, copy it right here. Copy, and I'm gonna post it into chat. Paste, and then what we'll do is we'll compare a lot of these artifacts that are found just at the Temple Mount itself, and if we're going to use the comparison. And here's one other thing that I failed to mention: Mecca, or I'm sorry, the Quran. Do you know how many times the Quran mentions Jerusalem?
0. 0. None.
0 times. It does not. Jerusalem doesn't even get mentioned in the Quran. Now I get it. The furthest mosque exists. Now it doesn't say Jerusalem though. Just like it only says Mecca one time. It's very vague and ambiguous. And this is what you would think that. Why is this not posting over in Facebook? Maybe Facebook is censoring the Temple Mount sifting project.
Oh man, wow, that would be really sad if that be the case.
Because
there is some links. There is some links that Facebook immediately comes back and says, "Nope, we've banned that URL."
Yeah. Oh well, you know what? The Crescen.com they banned.
Seriously? Wow. And the pillow guy too. I think I've tried to, put his link in Facebook and immediately, nope. You can't post this URL.
Yeah, here it is. Vagueness indicates a mythological story. Exactly. If you think something that was mythological or made up, it's going to be vague. And what is the Quran? Very vague. It's nothing near what. It's nothing near
which they protect.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm gonna call it a day. We'll be here Tuesday. I'm not exactly sure what we're gonna do Tuesday. We might do a little bit more on this. Maybe pick something else up from that class and go through that. If not, you can send me whatever ideas that you might want to have, or that you might want to discuss. With that said, we'll see you all on Tuesday. God bless. Thanks for coming, and we will see you then.